Hi there. Today we're talking about maximizing CFO productivity. And we're on the subtopic around understanding the hidden costs of SaaS deployments. Joining me today is Ray Bradbery, a seasoned veteran in the area of SaaS and managed services to help us flesh out some of the issues. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, welcome back. It's good to be with you.
Thanks, mate. So listen, a few reminders for today's webinar. We'll just ask everyone to keep, we are recording the session, so we'll ask everyone to keep their mics off. We will open up a chat for Q&A, etc. later on. Ray, we're great to have you here. You're the Executive Director for APAC, and you've led strategic direction and operations for offshore solutions across the Asia Pacific market for many years. We'll learn more about that shortly. And myself, the managing partner of Etter+Ramli, coaching clients toward ultimate success with NetSuite. Okay, Ray, just before we get started, I think it's really important that that everyone understands a little bit about your context. Can you give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, so I've worked pretty much across the world. Obviously, being an Australian, I've done a lot of work in Australia, but have worked for quite a number of US companies. So managing Asia Pacific, sitting on executive councils of one of the largest PC software companies in the world. I lived and worked in P&G for years. I've worked for a Swiss company based out of Basel. So I've been doing this for a long, long time. I have most worked in the technology industry. I do have a background in banking and finance as well, having worked for one of Australia's largest banks for many years. And for my sins, I owned a couple of cafes and a restaurant. So, experience in doing IT strategy for large organizations, working with dev tools, DevOps, managed services. I was a programmer, but I'm also a chef and a barista. So I've done just about everything.
That's terrific. That's terrific. What a great background, mate. I think this background really lends itself very well to what we're going to be talking about today. So just for some context, so my business is called Etter+Ramli. We run the client side for NetSuite as a managed service provider. We really focus on a concept called managed success, and we'll deal with that in a moment. But we exist independent and we exist on the client side, so we're client side enablers of change. I'm really charged with helping clients make better decisions toward all stages of their life cycle with NetSuite. We started the business a few years ago. It's a modest team, but growing, and our expertise is deep. Every one of the team is handpicked by myself, and that's important. I've spent about 23 years within the NetSuite community, so and come with an accounting background as well as a sales and marketing bent as well. So pretty good coverage there, and a growing stat base to support it. Managed success is the equation that we use to govern the business, and it's the concept that customer success plus a managed service is what creates managed success. And it's this notion that that the customer success alone is not enough in a concept from a vendor perspective. It needs to have client side deliverables on it, and that's what we're using. That's what managed success is all about. Additionally, driving our business, we see really 4 stages throughout the NetSuite lifecycle, and it's a rolling series of objectives. But in order for any customer to be successful, we feel that there are 3 main baselines. There's the triage, the automate, and the compliance. This basically means that users have to be stable, then all the processes that you can automate are automated, and then compliance talks about ensuring that things are done properly and that data, importantly, is at the highest possible quality. Once all those things are being managed and they're under control, then we can start to talk about business partnering for improved excellence in new applications, new modules, etc. So that's the way we approach all of our engagements with this model in mind. And shared expertise ensures success and growth, and that really underpins our approach as a managed service provider, in that we get to share the experience of all customers with each customer individually, and really push forward with what does success truly look like. Right. So the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about today, Ray. So let's deal with the first question. How are the hidden costs often overlooked?
So if we look at, most people when they're doing a business case for a SaaS implementation think that it's a matter of licensing the software and just running it and everything will be taken care of. But there's still lots of things that have to be done to keep it running, to guard against risks, to make sure that your security is set up properly, etc. And someone has to do that. And usually I find that it gets devolved to someone who's got some spare time, who may not necessarily have the expertise to do it or the knowledge to do it. But because they have some spare time, they get coerced into being the administrator or setting up the structures, etc., to run the SaaS application. None of those costs ever get factored in because they're hidden. It's part of some person's time, so it's not a full-time employee role, etc., and they're hidden. And if you actually factored in what the cost of doing all those part-time jobs is, it's probably significantly more than it is bringing a managed service provider to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the iceberg analogy is a great one, and the element that is visible, of course, is what's my license charge or what's my support charge, and all of the stuff underneath it is indeed what's often overlooked. You touch on the time taken by different staff to do things in a sort of a part-time or a less than part-time capacity. I mean, I agree with that 100%, Ray. But it's for me, it's even more nuanced than that, because it's talking about the time that people spend within different fields of expertise. Now, you might have a small element of IT's time for managing or developing a script or doing some monitoring an API, an integration, for example. Or you might have, functional people that are doing the task of, helping each other with reports, which of course becomes a drag on productivity, or letting the organization write all of their own reports, so that everybody has to learn the lesson themselves, rather than centralizing that information dissemination base. And then, of course, the next one is the often overlooked cost of, how does leadership keep up with what the business is really doing, and how is the business really using the application, and what happens after what happens next? Bringing those sorts of things into the context of the application and its usage. I mean, they represent really significant costs, and the vendor would have us travel to Las Vegas for their annual conference, and that's the end of it, which could be good fun, but it's so much more than that, because everybody inside of that ecosystem, when it's resident client side, without an external vendor influencing it, everybody's learning knowledge themselves, and so their feedback loop is somewhat limited, really, to their own experience and their own thought process, which is no disrespect to anybody. I'm sure they're all governed by very smart, intelligent people, but the point being that when you have an ecosystem of limited input, then the feedback loop on it is going to be limited input as well, or limited output as well. And I think that also represents an often overlooked cost, because it really means that the business is not completely embracing what's going on, or they're they're devoid of their own strategy and their own direction, and so lots of other things become shiny objects for them to follow down. And I personally see that as a cost, because it just creates it creates distraction, to be fair. Yeah.
Well, I always found too that there was that low level interaction between people where I'm trying to do something in NetSuite. I can't quite remember how to do it. So there's someone sitting at the desk and I say, can you remember how to do this? And what I get told is exactly the wrong thing to do. And so therefore, not only have I gotten bad advice, but then someone has to rework the errors I've made because I got bad advice.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, that's just well, and the report that you created, Ray, is different to the report that somebody else in a similar position created, and now you're both working off different data sets for the same job, and now we've got a difference in opinion because of the criteria and the structure of the report as well. No, it's huge, and what's more is that getting help with a safe search is not a task for support. It's a task for an experienced BA who can truly manage that process effectively. And that is it's trivialized. Well, I think it's trivialized on the part of by other stakeholders, because the reporting tools are pretty straightforward. But it's taken me about 20 years to get very good. Well, I personally think that I'm very good with safe searches, for example. And it's taken me literally 20 years to build that knowledge and build that competence. And I recently had the opportunity to use a competing SaaS product, and I was an absolute novice. I was the primary of primary when it came to that, and it took me a long time to just get on top of what some of those concepts were and how they work. So, you know, the thought that everyone can become their own report writer is, I think it's a bit fetched, personally.
Yeah,
a bit fetched.
Yeah, I've always found reporting tools really difficult. Of course, they're all got a different approach. So yeah, but as I say, I also think that the worst thing is always to ask the person at the desk is, how do you do this?
Right. And it's always the case. And you know what the risk is then? The risk then is, Ray, I don't know, maybe just export this list and go and fix it in Excel. And boom, immediately that you've had a leakage of value immediately.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
And who ordered to get Excel spreadsheet?
Right. And so now that hope of no more Excel sheets becomes the new norm. And
absolutely.
And the outcome gets done, and it's taken a little bit of extra time, so nobody really bats an eyelid, but it's happened. And then the first cut is open. Yeah.
Yeah, but then someone takes that spreadsheet, passes it on to someone else who merges it with their Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
And so suddenly you've lost the line of where did this data come from in the first place.
Yeah, happens too often. It's often why we get brought into customers, Ray. No, look, I think in all, these hidden costs are numerous. And every client's a bit different because the culture will govern how they do it. But there really are a lot of hidden costs in there, and a lot of them come down to knowledge and administration and really good account planning. That well, at least that's what I reckon.
Well, I think the other cost we have to factor in is the cost of risk. You know, if you're not setting your environment up properly to run with proper governance, etc., what's the cost of the risk that you might be implementing into your environment?
Right. Yeah. No. Agree. No, that's terrific, Ray. Let's push on. What about how do multiple SaaS tools add to complexity and cost?
Yeah, well, one of the things is you're not in control of your destiny. So particularly if you're running multiple SaaS applications, you've integrated them. So therefore, there's, one might be upgraded. Is that likely to break the link with the other SaaS tools you're using? So planning for those inconsistencies. There may be third-party add-ons that you add to the platform that again adds the complexity. So, it's not just as simple as implementing a SaaS application and that's it. If you're, for example, some people run a separate CRM to NetSuite. How do you integrate the two of them? What do you do in the CRM as opposed to what did you do in NetSuite? How do you make sure the two platforms are aligned? Are you using APIs to communicate back and forth, or are you using a third-party product and add-in to do the integration between the two of them? It all adds to the complexity, and it means that the skill level you require to maintain the environment goes up considerably, because not only do you need to know one platform, you might need to know two or three, and you might even need to know how does the integration layer sit between all of that makes it work.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I agree. Over the years, I've listened to a lot of customers talk about or really trivialize this concept of, there's an API for that, so we'll just connect these two things together. But the data structure that exists between two applications is very rarely a one-to-one relationship, which involves some layer of business logic. That then involves some need to monitor that logic's working properly, or to design it, run it, maintain it, and all of that. It really does add up to a lot of cost. The drive on it is often from a customer's perspective is about like vendor neutralization, so that they have these concepts in place. But there's a real cost benefit of doing that, and the complexity of adding multiple applications together, not just a single, like a CRM with the ERP, but other applications as well. That can really expand complexity a lot, and deal with those business issues in a very granular way, and that almost always comes down to more people, more expertise, and those people are the expensive ones. They're the integration guys. They're the programmers that really are the necessity in that zone.
Well, yeah, but just go a bit more on what you were saying is that, because you've got disparate systems, they may have different business rules around how things are structured. So, an address in one app may be in one field, in the other it may be broken up into multiple fields. So how do you do the mapping between those, etc.? So it really is a business logic exercise to make sure that the two stay in sync as well.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I've seen many customers deal with that problem firsthand, and it's the one that's becomes particularly tricky is when they're taking a transaction layer like an inventory movement, and they're using a journal entry to record it in the accounting system because that's the way they need to do it. And invariably the balance sheet starts to become disaligned with the inventory underlying asset. It just becomes a mess. A reconciliation mess, because things do break, things drop off, and everything appears like it's okay, but there'll be leakages through that process.
I've worked with organisations where their method of integration was copy and paste.
Right.
Amazing how that gets out of sync.
Right. Yeah. So, no, I wholeheartedly, I'm a big supporter of drive as much through one platform and one set of rails as you can.
Yep.
That's good, Ray. Well, what about the next topic? How to manage services across multiple installations add value?
Well, it's interesting because managed services, because you're bringing in expertise from outside who understand not only your environment, but also understand what best practice is, but also what things you shouldn't do. So they're bringing that expertise. So it means that you guard against falling into traps that others might have fallen in. But the managed service provider is also learning from a disparate range of industries and technology users, etc. So they bring that expertise to bear as well. So they're adding value by understanding that, here's the best way of doing things, here's the way not to do things. But more importantly, they're also keeping abreast of what's coming with the technology so they can start to help plan for, these are the things that are coming that you need to account for. Here's the change management you need to put in place so that your people are ready to accept the changes. So all of that is really difficult when you're trying to do that internally. And that's the added value that a managed service provides. But there's also things like just managing the relationship with the vendor. They can help with that as well.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that, Ray, because that, firstly, I agree with you 100%, but I agree with you because that's my learned experience. I started off with NetSuite as a customer, and I did that for about 7 years, and then I moved into NetSuite, part of their professional services business, where I implemented customers across the region, across Asia. And then I moved into the partner community where I was selling NetSuite and implementing it into customers. And now we exist on the client side, so we don't have a vendor relationship at all. And what I found throughout each stages of that trajectory is that the way customers unlock success is very different from different people's perspective. So the way the vendor tells you to unlock success, in my experience, is okay, but of course it's biased to the vendor's perspective. And as a partner, the objective was always to make sure that that customers were maintained to the extent that they could be, but there was also objectives from then the vendor to say go sell more software as well, and that created a real separation and quite frankly a trivialization of how difficult some of the customers' problems were, and really how much effort went into it. It wasn't until I got the opportunity to work client side with one of my major customers that I truly started to appreciate just how difficult some of these tasks were on the client side, and that once you get exposure to one customer and dealing with their internal issues that relate to managing success through their application, we found that the other customers had similar sort of challenges with similar sort of problems, and that allowed the group, all of the analysts on the team, to start to collaborate more about what does success truly look like and what are the true pitfalls of different configurations, and that really elevated our ability to engage. And because we engaged as a managed service, we're always present on the client side. So we sit inside of meetings that otherwise we might not be invited to because we'd be running by the hour. But because we run as a managed service, we get pulled into all sorts of internal meetings, and we're always listening for those opportunities and those issues that get created that either justify why moving out of system is the right thing to do, which is never the right thing to do, but sometimes the opportunity cost gets in the mind of the customer. But because we can be in these meetings and we exist inside of them, we're always listening, always adapting to it, and that allows us to become a lot more responsive to that value creation element, which is really about releasing value in the system's usage, so that all stakeholders get what they want from it. So it's interesting you say what you say, Ray, but like I said, my personal experience backs that up firsthand as well.
Yeah, well, I found in many managed service provider environments that the real value is that you're not part of the organization, so you're not being driven by internal pressures, etc. You really are an independent view of the world.
Right.
And therefore, I worked with one customer who engaged as a managed service provider because they were concerned that internally the presumption was that their team would always say yes because you've asked. Whereas the managed service provider, we would always look at, is this the best thing to do for your organization? And we could say, no, we don't think you should be doing this. Now, obviously, they get the right of veto to make the decision of whether it happens or not. But that impartiality was really important to them.
Yeah, it's my experience, Ray. We as a business, we work with stakeholders at the user level all the way through to the board, and that level of objectivity and candor is something that I've repeatedly had feedback on as being truly valuable, because different cultures will deal with it differently. In Asia, there's a propensity to say yes when maybe no's the right answer, but all over the world it's the same. I mean, people are interested in maintaining outcomes, and perhaps not thinking about total business value, but rather something a bit more micro. And so having that external observer that's independent of the process, not necessarily with any sort of self-review risk in it either, but just truly being there to help users and help the business unlock that value. I could never understand how a project organization could garner the ethos that's necessary to truly have a customer success strategy whilst they're trying to charge by the hour. Just personally.
Well,
that's why I designed the business.
Yeah, it's interesting, because we having sold technology as well as services, quite often it's about how much of this technology can I actually sell, as opposed to is this really what the business needs. And again, I think that's where the managed service provider brings that impartiality that's important sometimes.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. It's representing the vendor means you represent the vendor. In our case, we don't represent the vendor at all. It's just that it's the axe that we're pretty good at swinging. And so it's the tool that we use to help, or that we're knowledgeable on, that helps our customers, and it's the tool that they've chosen to do it. So, so that's agree completely. So how can managed services bring industry best practices?
So it's, as I mentioned a bit earlier, one of the things that the real value that I see managed service providers bring is that they're not just working with one customer. So they're gaining experience across a broad range of customers, different industries. They see what works, what doesn't work, and therefore they have an idea of here's the best way to set up NetSuite, in your case, for your organization based on the things we know. And just as importantly, it means that you can have expertise in the background who may not necessarily be involved with the account on a day-to-day basis, but can be brought in to bring that value-added expertise that, again, might not necessarily be devoted to the account on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, we see that every day, Ray. I agree. I mean, we've got customers in WD and manufacturing, in service delivery, and we're seeing similar sort of things that are different. They're all in different industries, but we're seeing how common problems apply across organizations, and how different industries approach the problems. Some of them are really good, and we're taking that and thinking about what that impact is, and use it as a refashioned. Well, it's learning for us on how we can apply it to other customers. We even see even inside of customers. One of our customers has grown over the years through acquisition. And as we've deployed NetSuite into their various subsidiaries, we've been able to unlock value that's been resident in those subsidiaries, really good ideas, and be able to bring them to the benefit of the rest of the organization because we're leading with an application first, we're leading with a customer success first kind of strategy. And so we've taken a number of initiatives that were resident, which we identified as being really good initiatives, and broaden them out to the rest of the industry. One of them is a calculation tool, Ray, that they make something. They make a piece of a consumable for industry that uses commodity inputs, and the commodity prices have been all over the place the past couple of years, and so their predictability on future cost was just impossible. And so we created a tool that came from one of their small subsidiaries, about how they do this particular calculation. We managed to bring it out to the whole organization and then deploy it, so that whole organization was then able to find out what their expected future cost of manufacturing would be today based on current prices rather than what their historical cost has been, which has been a bit transformational in how they run their business.
Yeah, no, well, it's an interesting, because I worked through quite a number of mergers and acquisitions, and yeah, that independence, I think, again, is important, because you can dive down into the things that are being acquired and say, are there best practices in there that might not necessarily be recognized by the parent body, because quite often the parent body thinks everything's perfect, and why would we want to learn from a subsidiary or an acquired company? And when you look at it, gee, that's a smart way of doing that.
Yep. I mean, all the time. And look, industry best practices is an interesting one, because from a vendor perspective, that's almost always heavily laced with configuring the software. But the software is configured inside of its own limitations as well. And so the best practice, as you step away from the vendor-centric view of the world and you start to embrace something that's a bit more holistic, you get to look at the problem of best practice from a broader vantage point, and that can truly open up opportunities in really identifying whether it's a people, a process, or a technology that's the ingredient in the best practice, and which one of those is the driver of change. And that can be an really important part of the puzzle that's often overlooked from a vendor perspective, that broadness of scope.
Yeah. Well, I always found the most important question to ask was, why do you do what you do? Because in many cases it's done that way because you've always done it that way. And that independent review that asks the question of, I can't understand why you're doing things the way you're doing it, here's a better way of doing it, is really valuable.
Yeah, it's valuable for everybody throughout that cycle.
Yep.
I agree. Terrific. Look, Ray, what we've spoken about here really talks to different strategies and different components that aim to lower cost, lower risks, and improve quality. I think the conversation's been invaluable, and I think there's a lot of great perspective in there that the audience can hope to learn from. Well, listen, thanks everyone for coming along. Ray, I really appreciate the candid conversation. I think your experience and knowledge has really come out in that dialogue. So thank you so much for taking the time. For the audience, if you want to get in touch with us, you want to talk about how you're achieving or not achieving your hopes with NetSuite, give us a call. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you and take a closer look at what you're looking to do and where you're looking to go with NetSuite. I'm sure we'll both be richer for the opportunity. Ray, you have a great day. Really appreciated it. Thanks so much.
No, happy to contribute. enjoyed the conversation.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.